Yeah.
So thanks a lot to all of you for joining AT Talks session number 10. Today we have Ms Nappinai, and she is staying in 8 Tower. I'll show a couple of slides to introduce Nappinai, and then I would request her to start her session. So I'll share a screen to show some slides. Yeah, so today's topic is cyber safety and cyber sathi, and it's going to be an interactive session with Nappinai. She stays in 8 Tower A303, and to introduce her, she is a Supreme Court advocate and a founder of NGO called Cyber Sathi, and she is a renowned lawyer with an experience of almost 30 plus years. She is an amicus curiae before Supreme Court in Prajwala versus Union of India case. She is an advisor to Tamil Nadu e-governance agency and advisor to Maharashtra Cyber Police. She has represented government of Karnataka, government of Kerala in a data protection case. She is an alumna of Stanford Chevening and IVLP USA. She trains judges, police, armed forces and intelligence agencies in cyber safety. She is an inspirational TEDx talk speaker. She has presented as an expert in cyber laws before various parliamentary and government committees. She has also presented on electronics evidence before Criminal Reforms Committee. She has presented again on various parliamentary committees on various cyber-related topics. She has also been part of various government committees on new technology areas like cryptocurrencies, blockchain, etc. And she contributed extensively to drafting of Indian Commercial Codes Act. She is a prolific writer. She has written a seminal book on cyber laws, and another book on cyber safety and emerging technologies is forthcoming. And she is an expert member of Tamil Nadu, one of the committees there, and also an advisor to various NGOs or non-profit organizations supporting various social causes. So with this, I'll request Nappinai to start her session, please.
Thank you so much, Anil, and thank you all for showing up today, as is the topic for my TEDx talk also. And I look forward to a very interactive session. And I would request all of you all to participate, because I've noted from various sessions that when we interact, when you ask questions and I give a reply, that always sticks more than just a monologue. So please feel free to raise your virtual hand in your box, or just put your questions on the chat box. Then I can call upon you to ask the question, even if it's midway, right? So don't hesitate to intervene, and let's make it an interactive session. The first part of this interactive process is where I have posted a question in the group. And remember, there are no negative marking for all the questions or the responses to it. So please put your responses. And that will help me to also pitch my presentation at the right level so that it's of relevance to all of you. And Mr. Lada, one request is there are certain, so these are some trigger warnings I wanted to share with you. Let me first start off by start with my first slide in the presentation. So in today's session, we won't be following a very typical pattern of me sharing a presentation and just finishing it. I'll be going a little back and forth with the presentation on, and then also with me moving back to a conversational process. So yes, as the introduction indicated, that when we talk about cyber sati, and why it was set up. I'll come to that. I'm sorry. I'll just complete the trigger warnings. So my request is that where I am showing some images which may be a bit disturbing, I will give you a trigger warning before the images are put up, or videos. So you may then want to just switch off your audio or video for a short while, for a few seconds only. No video or image will be shown for more than a half a minute or 1 minute at best. Particularly the very first video will be very disturbing for children. So please be mindful of that. There will be some anecdotal cases which I'll be sharing, which again may be disturbing. So please continue watching based on that. And also ensure that if you are asking children to watch this video later, please ensure that there is parental guidance in terms of what is, in terms of age appropriate content, because I'm primarily addressing the audience who is before me right now, who are all adults. Therefore, please be mindful of that. No part of this presentation can be reproduced without my consent. It is a copyright protected content. And I'm also using a lot of images which don't belong to me. Therefore, please do not reproduce them. My limited usage is what is permissible under law, under what is called as fair use. So with that, let me move forward to what exactly is it that I want to cover in today's session, and what is the focus of it. We are all living in the society. I've been following a lot of conversations in the groups. And the one thing that comes up is that predominantly all children, and an increasingly younger demographic at that, are equipped with a very, very powerful weapon in their hands. It is equally a weapon in our hands also, because age is not a differentiator. It's just that we assume that our experience and maturity will help us address this weapon better. But how better are we, how better equipped are we, is something you may find out through this interaction today. And what is the weapon I'm talking about? This one. Yeah. We don't realize that with this one tiny piece of equipment, we are getting control over data and information from across the world. There is a very dangerous part to this weapon, which is this camera here. We talk about disruptive technologies. One of the biggest disruptions was this addition of this camera into a mobile device, and that made cameras go defunct predominantly, right? And the digitization of photography made processes for photography go defunct too. But that is on an aside. But when we are equipping ourselves with weapons from this tiny size, a very simple thing which forms part of our everyday life, to something a little bit more complicated maybe. So for instance, let's say you're traveling abroad and you think it's such a cool piece of, a fun toy to bring back home to your child, and you bring back, let's say, a drone. How well equipped are you to know what are the laws pertaining to the usage of drones? If the drone can carry a payload, for instance, again, a camera on it, how equipped is your child to deal with the drone in understanding what is permissible and impermissible, right? And let's make it even simpler. You find this absolute cool dude toy which speaks. I remember from my time, one of the fun toys that I had was, you press its stomach and then it'll cry and then it'll pee. For us, the fun part was not the crying or the peeing, because it's quite painful. The fun part was in disassembling it to find out where exactly the mechanisms were and how it worked, But today you bring back a toy. It's not something that simple. It could possibly be a toy with a chatbot. It speaks to your child, and you think, here is a possibility for me to entertain the child and also to educate. But when it is two-way, when it is an active chatbot, it is connected to a server. You do not know what is the kind of information that the chatbot is collecting about a child. You would not allow a stranger into your home. You will not allow a stranger to speak to your child and ask personal questions. But by bringing that one doll into your house, you're actually ensuring that you're not letting one stranger into your house, but many strangers. You know, and if you think this is just a scary story, let me tell you the reality check of it. One of the cutest dolls that anybody could have come across was marketed substantially in Europe. And of course, many from India must have bought it also. And then there was an advisory that was issued by the European Union asking people to not just give away the toy, but to destroy it. Why? Because the EU came down very heavily on the manufacturer, the European Court of Justice, and said that the doll was actually having a conversation with the child and collecting personal information, which parents were not even aware that the child was sharing with the toy. And the only defense that the toy maker had was, oh, we are just improving the experience for children. By using all this information that we are getting from children, we are using it for marketing purposes. We are using it for developing better toys and whatnot. That's not permissible in law. And not one parent knew this was the kind of information that was being culled out, right? From a child. We are talking about data protection today. Imagine the kind of risk that you run when you're talking about arming or equipping your child with devices which you do not even know the extent of harm it can cause. Of course, there's also a larger issue where a nanny cam, which was put in the room of a child, was hacked, and the images of an 8-year-old were put online. So when we are using devices, when we are inviting devices into our home, and pardon me if I sound like a 16-year-old teenager, or should I say girl teenager, for those of you who may categorize it as such. But, I always use this example of a vampire. In all these teenage fantasy stories, they say that if a vampire has to enter your house, you have to give it permission. But once you have given permission to the vampire to enter the house, then there is no controlling the vampire. Remember that is exactly how devices are. Once you've invited devices into your home, then you have no control over how it works. And that's why I've used this quote from Thoreau, which I extracted and adapted in my book. And this is what Cybersati does. I noted from some of the early responses in the chat box that many of you have said, at the lower level, one, in terms of cybercrime. There are 3 things that you need to know if you really need to protect yourself. The first is trending cybercrimes, so that you know what you should protect yourself against, what not to do, how to protect yourself from falling victim to a crime. There is a second part of it, and that's something which may be inevitable substantially, which is that you will, despite your best efforts, fall victim to a crime. In that instance, you as a victim should know how to combat this. What are the remedies in law? What are the remedies which you can take even at a preemptive or a first level before you move to the legal scenario? For instance, you have now remedies. There was a mention about an amicus brief that I'm appearing in the Supreme Court on. One of the amazing things that came out of that case was a lot of the social media platforms were modified. The architecture of the platforms itself across the world were modified thanks to the intervention of India's Supreme Court. So, these are all cases which we don't really hear about. We hear about a lot of maybe a lot of positive and negative things, but here was something where we actually led from the front. And thanks to that change, today you have very specific reporting mechanisms within each social media platform and chat apps, which you can use to complain against cyberbullying, cyber stalking, inappropriate content that is being shared, imagery which should not have been uploaded, etc. And that helps in taking down the content very quickly. So this is a very first level of remedy which you have, where you don't even have to run to a police or court. And this is something we will be talking about, though I've already given you a fair hint on how to go about it. And the third step, which I personally feel all of us keep missing out on, is the unfortunate situation that I've been seeing time and again in my practice, as well as the work I've done with police and intelligence agencies, etc. And that is children. One is we as perpetrators, because we may be committing a cybercrime without situation to be in. But imagine how it can get worse when a child is actually committing a crime and does not even know that he or she is committing a crime. And therefore, it's really important for that one person in everybody's life whom we reach out to when in trouble, and that's our sati or friend. It is important for that one person to be sufficiently aware to guide you correctly, be you the victim or the perpetrator. And that was the basis on which I launched CyberSati. It was something that I actually conceptualized when I was in UK as part of the Chevening program. But it took the COVID lockdown for me to get started in full steam. And I can tell you within the first week of the lockdown, the website was up, and it is very knowledge heavy. So you can go there and it's all very conversational. You will probably get a lot. What are your remedies in law? And I will touch upon some of those aspects on why people get misled into thinking that law doesn't provide enough remedies for you, and why you should therefore look deeper and not not get carried away with superficial comments that you may hear either even from police. Unfortunately, you go to a police station to give a complaint and you will be surprised at the number of times they will say, but इसके लिए कुछ कानूनी सेक्शन नहीं है, ये हाँ प्रॉब्लम तो हो गया, आपको तो लॉस हो गया, but there is no remedy in law. So don't take that statement at face value. Dig deeper, because you will find remedies are quite substantial even with the existing legal framework. To put in my trigger warning, Mr. Lada, could we please stop the recording? And for those of you who may not want to see this video, because the image I showed is an indicator of what. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lada. So you can see now why I mentioned about the trigger warning and also the demographic. Now, here is an instance where you can't be watching what your child is doing or seeing online 24/7. You think that the child is watching as something as innocuous as Peppa the Pig. And in the middle of that, you have a Momo video coming in. This is reminiscent of the blue whale challenge also, which even the courts grappled with for finding a solution. A public interest litigation was in fact filed before the Supreme Court to deal with the challenge of blue whale. And the law enforcement authorities merely said that it is not like an app. It is not like the challenge comes up only in one particular place. So there is no way we can track it. So the way we do it now, and there is possibility now, is for instance, the video that I just showed you. A hash value can be created of that, and that is deployed. And if an innocuous video is embedded with a Momo video, it can be blocked. So these are all technology-enabled solutions that we are coming up with. But it's important for you to know that this is a threat scenario in terms of where you stand. If you are, concerned about being the cybersati for your child, for your friends, for your family, etc. Let's move back to the presentation now. Just give me a minute, please. Yeah, there we go. Cyberbullying. Now, this is something that's been really very disconcerting. Again, because cyberbullying is happening not just in terms of, the trolling online. For instance, there was a study by Amnesty International last year or year before last, where they took into account the bullying of women as a target, to be very precise, and women politicians. And the study disclosed that there are 10,000, not one or two, it's 10,000 toxic tweets against women politicians. And here comes the punchline: per day. It's not totally, it is not per month, it's per day. So when you look at that level of toxicity online, and you know that you can't control where you are, you can't control what you post and how you would conduct yourself online. A safe or responsible netizen can at best be cautious, know when to stop, when not to. One of the scariest stories that a study brought up was, it was a group of school children who decided to do a meme on one of their classmates, one of the friends group. And the meme was actually very simple and innocent. It was a child, a boy, okay? And we have to remember that children are vulnerable irrespective of their gender. So here was a case of a boy whose meme was created as if he's Superman. That's it, with a very innocuous comment. And it was meant only to be intra-group. It was never meant to go on public domain. The intra-group was hacked or in some manner breached, and this image found itself onto the internet. And now what happens is, a simple image of a boy in a Superman costume is being commented upon. And here is a trigger warning for you parents who may be showing this video to some children. So you may want to guide beyond this. So this is what happened in this case. It moved from being a simple image to pedophilia. The comments increasingly became sexual innuendo, and then it became violent. It became more about what somebody would want to do to the child, etc. Now, when the children took down the meme, that still didn't help because the images had already moved out. The next level of threat happened for the child because this was posted on social media, right? So the child could be tracked. And even where the child was then advised to just get off social media for some time, he was still being harassed through his friends. So then the friends came together to show solidarity, and all of them stayed offline. But that's not going to be possible always. I'm just putting in this cautionary note here. But in this offline for a while, ideally what should have been done is also given to give a complaint, because child pornography or child pedophilia is zero tolerance in all countries. We have a very, very strong law in India, which makes even browsing, forget about the comments, forget about the kind of statements that were made, but even browsing for child pedophilia is an offense in India. So therefore, you have a very strong remedy. Ideally, it should be taken forward to a complaint. So one of the things that I've been doing through CyberSati is to make sure that everybody goes forward with complaints. Because, we are talking about one cybercrime per se in every 10 seconds. Then, for a 1.3 billion audience of Indians, how is it that NCRB reports the cybercrimes complaint filing at a few thousands? It is next to impossible for a 1.3 billion populace to have only that many cybercrimes impacting them, when each one of us, and that would probably be my next question here, therefore. I will share the presentation as and when I want to make a point. Please bear with me on that, because I want it to be a little back and forth. And here is where you can also start putting your questions on the chat box, please. So when you answer this question on whether you've been a victim of cybercrime, keep in mind that you may not be aware whether you're a victim of cybercrime also. So you may post it in that also, in that sense. It could be yes, no, and I do not know if I have been, right? So please start giving the responses on this while I move forward. And also please start posting your questions. So I was talking about cyberbullying and about women and children being the most vulnerable. Here is a study which shows what are the social media platforms which are the most worrisome. And I purposely chose the toxic Twitter report of Amnesty International to make a point in terms of how women and children are impacted most on that. If you look at this graph, you will see that Twitter is at the lowest end of the spectrum, with Instagram being the highest. And the reason for this is because Instagram is also more personalized, and the kind of bullying and impact it has, especially on softer targets, therefore becomes a lot higher. So when we are using social media platforms, what is our remedy? How do we go about protecting ourselves or people around us? Let me see your responses to the, yes, precisely. Thank you all for participating. Thank you all. Yes, precisely. We may not even know that we are victims of cybercrime. Let me just give you this one example. Okay, before we move to the example, I'll tell you why I'm saying that you may not know at all is, you may have received some link, you may have received a message, inadvertently you may have decided to check it out. Though you wouldn't have fallen victim to the financial fraud. Let's just say, you have this typical financial frauds where you will get an SMS saying that if you want a loan, click here, 0 interest for the first 4 months, then 4% interest thereafter. The header shows as if it is from a well-known brand. And therefore, you may believe that this is something that is permissible. And unfortunately, this was one of the most prevalent cybercrimes during COVID, particularly because of the financial crunch that many faced. So you go and click on the link, it takes you to a particular page, and then it will ask you for certain details, or it may just say 404 error. So you may believe that you have not fallen victim to a cybercrime because it didn't go anywhere. But for all you know, by clicking that link, you may have downloaded a malware into your system. And remember, when we talk about computer systems today, as I said earlier, this is also a computer system. So when you are taking an antivirus, when you're taking protective mechanisms, from now on, please ensure that it's not just your computer, but your mobiles, your iPads, everything is protected with at least basic antivirus protection or firewall, etc. Because at least at a first level, in terms of known viruses, the antivirus will learn to filter it out. So at least some basic protection will come through. And yes, very good question from Ajay Kumar on how do I know I'm a target? So here is a situation where you clicked on the link and you don't know whether you've become a target or not. The only way to protect yourself is prevention, is indeed the better cure, So make sure that you keep checking your devices and also cleaning them regularly. Do your scans and all that. Don't get lazy. So, we talk about privacy. We talk about how important our data is. But do you know who the biggest enemy for all of our private data is? Invariably, it is ourselves. Invariably. Because we want convenience. Earlier you would get a link, you would have to, or you'd be guided on how you have to go to your bank account and how you have to sign in and how you have to do a particular process. But you wanted convenience. So a link that is sent is so much more convenient. You want to do your web check-in, You have to go to the website, you have to open the browser and go into the thing, then copy paste or remember to add the PNR number, etc. But if the airline is giving you the web check-in link, which takes you directly to your page, isn't that convenient? So we want that convenience. But with every click, we don't realize that we are actually weakening our own strengths. So therefore, knowing if you've been a target or not is very easy when you have fallen prey to an actual financial fraud or cyberbullying or cyber stalking, etc. And cyber stalking is a higher level of bullying where somebody continuously, persistently contacts you, even if it is just to say good morning, good evening. I'm not talking about the messages on groups, but if it is individual at odd times, especially after you've told somebody, do not contact me again. And if someone continues to do so, even that would amount to cyber stalking. And here again, this is where I would like to bring in that one part of that remedy I told you about, where, one of the reasons I set up CyberSathi was I was speaking on data protection at this particular event. And a very fairly senior lawyer was speaking on cyber crimes. And this person goes on stage and very confidently says, there is this one horrific crime that's happening. Again, trigger warning for you adults, if you're showing this to children. There is a horrific crime that's happening and trending, unfortunately, called revenge porn. But revenge porn is just colloquialism for cyber extortion or cyber sextortion. And what exactly is cyber sextortion? Children unfortunately do this, and adults too. You've been given this very powerful weapon, again, back to the same weapon. And here is where it becomes more potent. And you want to get adventurous. So you're in a relationship, you trust each other. So you are recording certain things. It could be imagery, it could be videos, etc. And then the relationship breaks. And one person may not want the break, or one person may expect something else. There have been innumerable cases where it has resulted in sexual favors, it's resulted in financial favors, where children are then forced to steal from home and hand over money. Adults have fallen prey to it. One of the most horrific cases that came out of this kind of case was from the southern part of India, from a place called Palachi, which is in near Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu. It's called the Palachi Sex Scandal, but according to me, that's a misnomer. It's a Palachi sextortion scandal, I would say. So a group of boys started befriending girls, and then, the boyfriend would then invite the girl to a public place, at the marketplace or in the broad daylight. And then she would trust this boy because she's in a relationship. And then he says, why don't we just go home? Nobody's at home or something. And then 3-4 boys pile into the car, and then they take her there, and where the rest of the story will go. Unfortunately, that's not the end of the story. Then the boys started using this video to blackmail the girl for further favors, be it sexual or financial. And in one case, the brother of the victim finally gave a complaint, and that happened because he actually went to the boy who was threatening the girl. The girl confided in him. He was a good cybersathi there. And the boy went to the perpetrator's house to just delete the video which pertained to his sister. And when he beat up this boy and then took the mobile phone to delete, he realized there were so many other such videos. And they were true brave hearts who decided that irrespective of the stigma that always attaches us with victims like that, which again is something we have to evolve and stop, this victim blaming and shaming. Anyway, again, another topic for another day. But in this case, the boy gave the complaint. And what came out with just the first few days of investigation was that there were more than 50 victims, which were school and college students. And here is the scary part, teachers. Teachers have fallen prey to cases like this. So when a very senior lawyer was saying that there is no remedy in law for this, it was worrisome for me. And therefore, again, one more reason why I wanted to set up CyberSathi to be an authentic information online, which is easily available for everybody. And there I posted cases like this and what are the sections in law which you can apply, because you have one special law, the Information Technology Act. You have several provisions that were added in that which primarily deal with cybercrime. For instance, there is a provision 66E which deals with privacy. Privacy there is not the way you understand privacy in data protection, but privacy in terms of where we understand that we have privacy, like inside a bathroom or in a changing room, or like in these instances, if you're having a personal relationship, you will not expect somebody to record and share that. So what 66E says is if anybody captures, even capturing is an offense, or shares it online, then it is the private parts of a person where that person had reasonable expectation of privacy, or they did not give permission for either the capturing or dissemination, then it is an offense. So revenge porn, as I just described to you, therefore clearly falls within that, because even where children or adults may have recorded something of their own volition, and thereafter they are being blackmailed by use of that, and the person who's blackmailing then shares it online or with other third parties. For instance, I've dealt with a case where it was disseminated. The person hacks into the email account of the victim and shares personal imagery they have consensually taken, but which she has not agreed for sharing with her family and friends, and worse still, colleagues. And she was a top management person in a multinational. And this was shared to all her contacts in her email ID. That was a clear case of multiple offenses, not just one. The hacking per se is an offense in itself. Then sharing of this imagery with those persons, blackmailing the lady for continuation of the relationship is an offense in itself. So you will have multiple remedies. So I just mentioned one example from the Information Technology Act, but keep in mind that there are also general laws, like the Indian Penal Code. So where the IT Act may not give you some remedies, you can definitely resort to IPC. And that is why in my book, I call it the cyber law jigsaw, because unfortunately the remedies are available, but they're available in different places and you must be able to put it together. And that's the help that Cybersati tries to do when it, gives you these kind of options. But remember, it's not exhaustive, it is just indicative. Now, coming back to some of the questions that have been raised, yes, banks indeed are susceptible to, and it's a very high level of cybercrime which impacts banks. One of the classic case studies is of the Cosmo Bank heist, where the SWIFT code process was actually hacked and impacted. But let me just come to closer to home issues in terms of financial frauds, because the whole exercise of today's session is to keep ourselves safe as a preventive measure, right? So one thing that you're all already possibly aware of, but if you're not, here is a very quick heads up for you. If you're being offered something that seems too good to be true, it is not, it is too good to be true. So please be very careful. Do not fall victim to offers like this free loan, free inheritance, lottery. You'll be amazed at how even lawyers have fallen victim to scams like that. And it was so funny to see actually two lawyers in the Delhi airport, where I saw them looking like, they've just attended a funeral. And when I asked them what happened, he said, we fell victim to this financial fraud. Somebody had taken out 25,000 rupees from us in two tranches. And then they asked for 85,000 rupees. And we said, no, unless you give this check of inheritance to us, we won't give you this 85,000 rupees. So that person possibly decided to have a last laugh. And he said, you come to Delhi, I don't want to cross immigration. So I will come up to the Delhi airport, give you the check and take the check for 85. I take the 85,000 rupees from you. And two lawyers actually went all the way from Bombay to Delhi to collect a check at immigration. I mean, you should know, right? How are you going to even go up to immigration to collect a check? But sometimes, I always say that there are two things that drive the world, which is greed and fear. So a lot of crimes happened earlier using greed. Now what they do is they use fear. And that's what happened during COVID. All of us were so keen on knowing what was happening with COVID. What are the trends? Where are the maps? Which is a containment zone? And here the criminal is so alert and he knows how to take advantage of a trend. So immediately COVID apps were put up, which will give you authentic COVID information. But the minute you download the app, you have made your device vulnerable to remote access. So for hacking, to put it very simply. So what you didn't realize was that along with the app, you downloaded malware, right? Again, online websites also in terms of COVID. Then the PM Care Fund, that was the most popular one with criminals. PM Care Funds in variation. So some of the earliest cases I've dealt with are, it would seem very innocuous when we call it cyber, what do you call it? You just hold on to a website, right? So for instance, I'm just giving this as an example. If you're taking SBI and I create an account saying SBII. So by mistake, if you're typing SBI and you type SBII, you have actually landed in the fake account. So you don't realize that somebody is just squatting on that account. And that's what it was called. So when you call it cyber squatting, it seems innocuous. But imagine a cyber squatting getting converted into cybercrime because you didn't realize that there is a slight variation in the spelling, slight variation in terms of what you're clicking on. Because you only, see, when we read a sentence, and you must have seen this WhatsApp forward so many times, it will have this message without our AEIOU, right? The vowels. And the whole challenge is about how do you read the message without these vowels? And you will still be able to read it. That's an indication that when we read, we don't read the entire thing, we read contextually. And that same contextual reading is what the cyber criminal uses to mislead you into the wrong account. So I'm not saying don't do anything online. I'm just saying be very cautious. Anybody, be it a job opportunity or employment that's being offered to you, be it a loan, be it any form of online transaction which asks you for payment first before you get some benefit, stop right there. Chances are it is fraudulent. Some of the worst kind of things that also cropped up were passport frauds, where people were collecting your personal data by setting up a fake passport renewal, online thing, etc. So many things have been happening during COVID. More we have used the systems, the more vulnerable it becomes. So let's be a little bit careful. And given the thing on time, let me move to the next level of my presentation. The third part of what Cybersati does, which I mentioned to you, which is that we may actually inadvertently be committing a crime. How do we protect ourselves from that? Here are a few instances I wanted to share. Have you all, I'm sure you've all heard of the Blue Whale Challenge. We just talked about that also with respect to the Momo equivalent, but Skull Breaker Challenge. And that's the one which you see in the images here. See, as children, I've grown up with brothers and I know they are very mean. And I mean, I don't know, I always think sisters are very sweet, but yeah, we assume brothers are very mean, right? So they may have done this to us, tripped us up, or I may have done it to them. We would do this one thing where, we'll pretend that we are standing and then kick them from behind, etc. But when it becomes something that you do because you want more likes, because you want more views, that's when it becomes very scary. So I'll take a couple of minutes here to show a few videos. So Mr. Lada, could I please request for the recording to be stopped? In mind and to guide correctly, what is it that we are okay with sharing? What is it that we are okay with permitting in terms of process? So this is a message, strong message that I would want to send out to all of you, which is, one, keep in mind that you cannot track your child all the time. please open the Times of India for today. You will find this case of a child running away from home, and the entire process of running away is being planned online in a site called Discord. So there are so many sites, there are so many things that are happening which we don't even know about. And you have a situation where the child not only runs away, but goes off to Goa and stays at a 5-star. So that means he has been told how to plan the whole thing. And he's found staying with a 22-year-old. Imagine the same situation if it is a pedophile who is socially grooming the child and asking them to move away from home, right? And there are innumerable instances like this, and unfortunately too many which I have dealt with also, where very, very young children think that they are interacting with children because they are looking at the photographs on profiles of maybe even videos being shared, etc. And they think they are talking to a teenager to teenager. So they can be a little bit more adventurous than they would with an adult or whatever, you know, I mean, like the child behaves differently when it is pure, right? We would also probably do that. And then it comes out that it's actually a pedophile. It's an adult who's just grooming the child and pushing them to share private imagery and videos. In one case, it was actually being live streamed on adult pornographic sites. So we have some very scary cases out there, and it's really important. And that's why I always use this one image saying stranger danger. We tell a child about, you know, we've grown up in a world where we would be told, don't take a chocolate from a stranger. But we are the ones who encourage children, and sometimes even newborn babies have their own social media accounts, and you do not know what's happening there. So the best thing you can do is be a good cyber sati to the child, to yourself, to your friends. Talk about cyber crimes more, talk about whatever you read, because it's better to know rather than become a victim and find out later. And when you talk enough, you will then be surprised to find out that you were actually a victim of cybercrime. You may just not know about it, and you may have gotten away a little bit more easy than others. That's the good news there, I would say. I'm kind of jumping a few slides here. And here is where I think I'd like to also open up for Q&A, please. Anybody has a question now, please just unmute yourself and ask your question. It could also be about something that you may want to you may want to share as an experience, or it could be something that you have seen some friend of yours or someone go through. Please feel free to raise your question.
Hi. This is Pravina here. Hi. So we download apps on our phones, iPads. We use our laptops. So is there a tool available to keep checking for all the kind of access and controls and cookies and things that, these various apps tend to sort of have access to, or take charge of our devices? I think that's the scariest part, that we actually have no idea what's happening. Email also, maybe we can be more careful not to click on. But if I think I'm using a genuine app for tracking my health or something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's an important question. Thank you for that. But the thing is that it's actually device. The first thing is you will have to read at length terms and conditions. So the alternative, and this is not a verb or a thing for an iPhone, but I was always an Android user until I found out that the iPhone is one device which allows you to choose each and everything that you allow an app to use. So, if you go beyond convenience and you go to your iPhone settings, you'll find that you can actually block. I mean, every single app will ask you for. So if you're asking for a general device, I'm not aware of it in terms of a general check on which app asks for what. But if you go online, You will find innumerable content which will do not only a full thorough analysis of the app and what it takes and what it does with it, but also a comparative study of it. So that's a direct answer to your question, but going a little bit further, do go to your settings and check. You will find in your settings that it will give you a drop down which will ask you for allowing for each and everything. Like for instance, your contacts, your video, your microphone, your, just location and name what you will. So you can control what the app has access to based on that. So if it is a very paranoid person like me, I would even go take the effort of blocking camera and microphone every time and only open it when I have to use it on a WhatsApp. And similarly, keep your location services blocked unless and until it's necessary. You can, again, when you go to locations also, it'll ask you which are the, so you have two different kinds. One is within the app, you can check what are all the things it collects. The other is you go to your privacy setting and you will have all those separate buttons, and each of those will have a drop down which will tell you which are the apps which are asking for it. And you can control it over there. So it becomes more device related rather than using a third-party device to check something else on this aspect. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Nappinai ji, for a wonderful session on cybersecurity all the time. I'm a senior citizen. So as a citizen, what precautions as an individual should we take? Should we block or should we do away from WhatsApp and Facebooks?
Not really. See, we can't eschew technology. Today it's there to stay, but we can use it judiciously. So for instance, there are certain apps that you need for sure. So you will download it. But what you can check on a browser, evaluate whether you really need the app on your phone. That's a simple first step. The second step is, as I've just put here in this thing of how to be a responsible netizen, see what you're sharing. You know, I'm very concerned even with my own family, you know, in terms of what all they share and how they share, etc., including, you know, throwback pictures and whatever. Yes. So when you're sharing something, remember that your pictures don't just give information about you, your family, etc. It actually contains information of your location. You may be giving away details of where a child is studying, which class, what classmates. So one person decided to do this very funny experiment. I used to use that video also sometimes, you know, where he just confronts you on the road. And then he'll say, you know, your name starts with V. And then he won't just jump in to say Vinod, you know, directly. He'll just say V. And I think you live in this place. You have friends who are, you know, who have the names of, let's say, A, B, C, and, you know, and then go on for a few minutes until he freaks out the person, because they'll say, how do you know all this about me? And then only after they get really scared, he'll tell them, I actually got all this information from your Facebook account. So when you're posting on Facebook, when you're using social media, use it carefully. Evaluate whether it's information you're happy to share with strangers. If you are, please go ahead. If not, then pause. You know, I always tell people, just press pause button whenever stop from doing something. Nobody should be stifled. And let me tell you, being cautious on the digital domains is a very tiring process. At some point of time, you will get so tired of doing it, you will say, oh, forget it, let me just go about it, you know. And that is what we call as fatigue, the digital, you know, the cyber safety fatigue also. So understand that these things will happen. Understand that you may fall victim also, it doesn't matter, but take your remedies. So for instance, one of the cases I dealt with was for a friend. Her father fell for a mutual fund crime, you know, where, and this is all, like I told you, no, they only use fear. So the COVID fear was that if you do not do the KYC, your bank account will be frozen, then you will have to go to the bank, and you couldn't go to the bank because you're in a lockdown. right? And you don't want your money flow to be blocked. So you think you have to do it. And here was a case where it was of mutual fund. And it was a standard KYC scam saying if you don't do the KYC, then your mutual fund, your X lakhs will become only this much and things like that. Only 10% will be given to you and something like that. So this man lost several lakhs in the process. And then he woke up to the reality that it was a crime. But he is one of those very highly respected patriarchs who advises everybody on investments and all that. So he started feeling ashamed that I have fallen victim, and he didn't want to take it forward. So we spoke to him, convinced him to file the complaint, and you won't believe what happened. Within a day of our talking to him, he said, let me think about it. And this person who has already siphoned about a few lakhs from him called back. And then he just disconnected and he spoke to us again saying, this lady is so confident, she's calling me again after committing such a big crime. So we said, here is your opportunity, help others. Because when you keep silent, because you feel ashamed, you're not just falling victim yourself. You're helping the criminal make other people also victim, right?
Yes.
And we gave a police complaint and the police were able to set a trap and this person was apprehended. So I know I digress from what you asked, but the reason for that is that these are all interlinked. As somebody rightly posted on the chat group, you will find a lot of these pop-ups for loans and whatever, advertisements. And therefore, in one case, which I handled again during COVID, was a person filed a case against Facebook also because they have hosted this fake account on their site, and he said that I accessed the fake account through Facebook because the advertisement kept popping, because Facebook's AI may not know whether it's a genuine or a fake account, fake advertisement. They have a general process for advertisements where they may be promoting it and they end up actually assisting in a crime. But they have the safe harbor provision. That's on another, on an aside again. But the problem is social media today is not just about vulnerability with respect to your data. It has also become the fishing grounds for criminals for committing crimes, either by using the data they're getting from there or by using the platform to reach out to you. So therefore, you need to be careful. Do you therefore then just close your account and go away? Not quite, right? See, I come from a generation where we did not have devices. We didn't have connectivity. And it was so amazing to connect with classmates. I'm giving away my age, okay, by saying all this. But it's a reality.
Yes, we enjoy it.
School and college friends, thanks to all this.
Yes.
So we can't run away from it. We have to be careful in how we use it.
We are, and we'll be a little more after your deliberations, I'm sure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Trivedi, please go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I also posted it on the chat box. See, we cannot prevent our children from participating in social media and using gadgets. So how do we coach them on cyber safety? Are there some courses available which, we can encourage them to take or something?
Yeah, so one of the things which I did was actually which I was giving for free. I mean, like I was, the whole idea of putting up this whole thing was to do everything pro bono and to make it more accessible. Right now it is offline. If it becomes online, I'll definitely tell you. But let me again digress a little bit here, and that's going to be the biggest challenge for all of you. We are, as far as I can see, at least everybody on this platform right now are seniors, adults, or definitely not millennials, or definitely not children, right? Now, you're buying a new gadget. How do you set it up? Who sets it up for you at home? It'll probably be your child. You may take 4 hours over, getting a new mobile started. Your child will do it like that. You try going and advising your child then on cyber safety. They'll say, "Arey, Papa, what do you know? You didn't even know how to start your own phone. What you're coming and telling me about safety, right? Or Mom, I had to do this payment for you online. You were too scared to finish it. You don't come and tell me." So here is where the problem is. when we were growing up, there was a very clear authority figure, your parents, your teachers, etc. Today, the teachers are the victims of cyberbullying and stalking by whom? By the children. One of the scariest cases that happened on June 1st, 2020, when virtual classes started was this, schools had prepared these videos, and one was from Kerala, this blue sari teachers, the bullying trend, okay? Where one child decides to put it online, and again, very innocuous comments made, all like whatever they may have done in their playground, sitting outside the class, okay? Post-class, we have all gone through that in our childhood. You just chat, you think it's very funny, you say something and all that. But the same thing when it goes online becomes very scary. And here was a case where again, what started very simply became sexual innuendo and all, and a criminal case was registered. So the best way we can help our children is let them teach us. So for them to teach us, they have to learn. And for them to learn, you can only guide and say, look, I believe that, you can, I'm just saying, do a role reversal here. Make them the authority figure even for cyber safety. Tell them, I believe that it's there are lots of threats. Somebody called and asked for an OTP. I didn't know whether I should give it or not. Do you know what is happening? Can you educate me, or can you find out and tell me about trends? Talk a lot. Discuss cybercrime with children, because that's something nobody does. So one of the things I did was, luckily, thanks to a couple of grants we got, I covered more than 15,000 students during COVID in the first few months itself, where we found out that most children do not know the difference between a prank and a crime. They don't know when a prank against a classmate, like setting up a fake account, using it. How many times we have seen it in movies also, right? You set it up as if it's a girl, but it's actually a guy setting up the account. Then they reach out to a boy and try to make it like an online relationship. And then at some level, it crosses the line, because you've now collected personal information from the boy, which you then start using to threaten the boy. And that is when it becomes a crime. So the whole idea of Cyber Sati was, make the children know and make them go and share with the adults, because we have now made them the authority figure when it comes to technology. So let's try and enable them to learn and teach us. That way, they also become a little bit more safe, and they may actually make you feel safer too. How to go about it? Yes, there are programs like what I've been doing, etc. And there are schools should be encouraged to make it part of it. That's something, irrespective of whether it's Cyber Sati or anybody else, I would strongly advise that all parents request schools to have interactive. Please do not have sessions which teach the students what to do and what not to do. Like with every other teaching, it will go out of the window. Nobody is going to follow it, because children today do not like, or young adults, as they prefer to be called, right? They do not want to be told what to do and what not to do. You have to walk with them and make them understand. And that's the best way you can ensure their protection, because you can't be there for them all the time. Because let me tell you, an online game, all your children play multiplayer games online. And all of them are processes for children to be continuously in touch with strangers from across the world. There are in-game chat apps. You do not know what your child is sharing over there. You do not know what somebody else is encouraging your child to do through that in-game chat apps. Therefore, you cannot be a helicopter parent. So the better way to do is trust, share, be that friend, be that cyber sati, as I always say. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think it was a wonderful session, and it's a great. I mean, we are at least aware of what we should do and what we should be more cautious. So, I'm really indeed thankful to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was the whole idea of the session. I just wanted to share as much as I could, because
you did.
Thank you. So So thank you all then for being here. It's really wonderful that you're all taking time out on a Sunday morning. Yes, Ms. Agarwal, please go ahead.
Yeah, you were mentioning about the location thing. Just repeat those things about why we should always keep the location mode off.
Because when you keep your location mode on, not just the apps that you have enabled to garner that information, but even where you may sometimes keep it off, there are certain apps which will keep tracking and the data is sent the minute you switch it online. Okay. And what is the information that you're sharing once your location is on? Where you live, where you work, where you frequent, right? So any person who can gain access to that. See, one aspect is the apps and whatever which has access to it, which claim they're using it for marketing, but they're profiling you. The other aspect of it is if perchance your device is hacked and somebody is viewing all this, and you know, you must have heard, and I have been quite vocal in terms of the Pegasus issues and all that on various platforms, on TV and whatever, right? But the one thing everybody forgets is you don't need a Pegasus to hack into somebody's phone. You don't need it for you to view what they are doing on their thing. All you need to do is gain screen access. So if perchance if your device is hacked, then all your personal data in terms of where you are and what you're doing gets disclosed. And it is not just fiction when somebody says that they found out that you were, car GPS systems were hacked to find out where somebody's home was and where will they be, so that when they're in office, the thief could enter the house and in one case a full movers and packers were brought to clear it out. So it's a very dangerous the option, which is very useful but can be misused against you horribly.
So I just want to add this. These days, the kids are using Apple, most of the Apple phones, and the parents mostly use Samsung or Android things. Kids have a confidence that Apple is more protective than Android. So is there something like that also? Because I deal with these questions every day.
See, Androids are using open source software. And there is a general myth or a presumption about it that because it's open source, it is more vulnerable, and Apple is proprietary software. And the second thing is that, criminals, see, cybercrime is a very expensive affair. Unlike what you think, it's not that easy to commit a cybercrime also. So there has to be return on investment for the criminal also. So they target the devices which maximum number of people use, which is why Microsoft is more vulnerable than Apple, because Apple is looked at as elite and, Microsoft would be the larger user base, right? Similarly, here Android again has the same problem. I would only say this, whenever somebody makes tall claims, remember what I said earlier, if something is too good to be true, it is too good to be true, right? Take everything with a pinch of salt. I've handled a case where an Apple phone was, which was fingerprint protected, had been opened. Even my forensic guy said, no, it could never have been opened. And then I had to show him this video which showed that it had been opened and what was all the data that was collected. So it can happen. There is this author called Kaffenberger who says there are only two kinds of devices. One which has been hacked and the other which is waiting to be hacked. I changed it in my book to say there are two kinds of devices. One which has been hacked and the other which has been hacked, but you don't know it has been hacked. That's the only difference in these. So take it with a pinch of salt. As I said, we can't be too paranoid. We just have to be cautious. That's all.
Thank you.
So please. Santosh, please go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am, for the session. One of the things, so I have a family business and there I am kind of susceptible to a lot of phishing attacks, and this grows across borders because there are a lot of international transactions which happen. So a person sitting in Bombay like me, how do I kind of catch a person who in Malaysia who's trying to attack me in a way and get a hold of my transactions and loot the money? So is there a way I should go about it?
Yeah. So I'm glad you raised that. Let me share the last. I forgot that I missed out the last slide on this. because that gives you some of the important websites you need to use. One, when you fall victim to a cybercrime, remember that today you can sit at home, just like how you sat at home and fell victim to cybercrime, you can sit at home and file your complaint also. Please make a note of this website, cybercrime.gov.in. So now this again was actually an outcome of Prajwala. See, Prajwala case was one of those life-defining moments for me, where I was actually, every lawyer, at some level gets into the profession because we think we are going to be contributing to the society, to nation building, etc. And we do it from small to large levels. And Prajwala gave me the opportunity to do it at an international level. As I said, changing architecture, bringing in systems and methodologies. And from the government side, the undertaking they gave and which they did was cybercrime.gov.in. It was launched in 2017 just for women and cybercrimes against women and children. Then in 2018, it was expanded. We had a lot of discussions, conferences and all that, and we decided that it makes sense to make it broad-based. It could not have been done at a better time, before COVID. Unfortunately, and there was a question about, was there an increase in cybercrimes during this COVID time? Yes, indeed there were. From 2020 onwards itself, see, again, as I say, take all statistics also with a pinch of salt. There was a lot of cybercrimes even earlier. It's just that it became more visible during COVID. But we know for a fact that there was an exponential increase in cybercrime during COVID, and cybercrime.gov.in was not able to deal with it because suddenly it is bombarded with several thousands or millions of complaints as opposed to earlier. So one, right now it's been upgraded and all that. So please use this for your complaint. Two, there are two ways that law functions internationally, and it is at a super slow pace, right? Super slow pace. One is through the letters rogatory, if you file your criminal complaint, etc. And the other is through the mutual legal assistance treaties. So if your crime happened in Malaysia, you have to first check what the MLAT terms are.
Okay.
Then you need to file your complaint and move it forward for remedies. That is one way. The other way, as I told you earlier, is remember about the simpler alternative you have of complaining to platforms. And when it is a financial fraud, UP, thanks to one particular person who is a very dear friend also in the UP police, and Delhi police have been very, very successful. Maharashtra Cyber was also very active, proactive, including through COVID. They were open, they were working all the time. And I cannot tell you, one of the most amazing operations we did just before COVID started, Operation Blackface, was what we used, the Prajwala developments, to run an operation against child pornography, where 400 plus complaints were registered in less than a month. I'm just mentioning all these statistics to show that these are all jurisdictions which are very active in their fight against cybercrimes. If you go to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 and all, it becomes that much more difficult, right? But when you're in a metro, if you move quickly within 24 hours, there are methodologies through which you can actually block a transaction, you can reverse it, you can ensure that there are also zero liability processes under the RBI circulars. There are limited liability processes, depending on how quickly you complain.
Okay.
Be it a credit card, debit card, or a banking transaction failure, or a crime, right? Okay. The only issue I have with RBI is the UPI-based one. So again, I am one of those paranoid persons who does not use a UPI-based app for online transactions, because it's the most vulnerable, because you have an app which connects to your bank account. The app is not liable for the thing. The bank may or may not take liability, and here you are getting your bank account cleaned, wiped clean. So these are issues that you have to deal with, keeping in mind the facts and circumstances of each case. So in your case, I will have to evaluate it as a case basis to see what the facts are, what is the country involved, where and how your problem has happened, at what stage have you given the complaint, if at all. If you give a complaint today, what are your remedies?
Okay.
But let me tell you this, if you move quickly enough, and this is what I always say, and this is why I call it in my book, I call it the breadcrumb trail, electronic evidence. because I draw from Hansel and Gretel to say that electronic evidence, unlike paper trails, are actually there. It's easier for you to get, but you have to move fast.
Okay.
So if you delay, like in Hansel and Gretel, the birds will come and eat the breadcrumbs.
Understand.
So before the breadcrumbs disappear, move quickly.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Maybe I'll touch base with you offline.
Definitely.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Hello, may I ask a question, please?
Sure, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Yeah. With the limited time that you have been given, unfortunately, you have put us in the fear mode. We look forward to another session where we feel more safe.
Absolutely. No, the intent is not. That's why I very clearly said when Vinodji asked also, don't shy away from technology. Don't be scared of it. Be cautious.
Yes.
But when, to give a very simple example, I always tell people, we know fire burns. So does it mean we stop using fire? We still use it. Without that, we can't survive with our lovely cuisine and cooking and whatnot, right? So when you know that fire burns, knowing that it burns is important, knowing when and how it will burn is important, and knowing what to do if it burns is important. That's it. And that's what today's session is actually supposed to do. If you're still scared, do take time out and read the portion which says case studies on CyberSathi's platform. You will find that in each and every case, I would have finished off by saying you do have remedies, you can file so-and-so cases. But as with the earlier question, there are problems, there are impediments because cyber crimes happen across multiple jurisdictions. Whereas we are bound in law within one nation's law, right? Territorially bound. Those are impediments. But to a large extent, there are security measures. There are things which we are evolving day by day also, which is meant to protect you. And yes, I would be happy to give another session if you think that's definitely needed for giving more courage for usage. But
Madam Nappinai, I would like to support what my co-resident Jaishiji has said. You have put a fear of God in all of us. Fear of technology.
Some more education.
So now you must educate all of us. We all make huge amounts of financial transactions online. So you must equip us with the kind of safeguard we should take in making these financial transactions.
Madam, some more education for adults is required. We talked more about children, which was very good. And thank you for introducing that portal for us. It will certainly be very helpful in the family. But I think we need to know more as to what are the safeguards which we need to ensure. You have been very good in telling us what are the actually danger points, particularly mobile phone, which is the biggest danger point which you have clearly, and those apps which are asking so much information and putting it down. But our appetite is yet to be satiated for that.
Today we have learned that fire burns.
You still need
we need to learn how to avoid it.
Definitely.
Yeah. So thank you so much. There was so much clarity in the way you speak. You're so wonderful.
Thank you.
And bless you. Thank you so much.
Can you just highlight on the cookies which are being this thing? Because they do carry a lot of our browsing information.
Absolutely. So now under the European Union's GDPR rules, there are very strict rules in terms of use of cookies. Once, whenever it comes, whenever it sees the light of day, once India gets its data protection bill, that will also become the norm for India. Until such time, two things. One is check, if you look at every site which asks you to accept the cookies, it will give you more options. And when you go into more options, and because of European Union, and because websites can be accessed from anywhere, you're getting the second option. Again, don't use convenience, use a little bit of effort, go to the more options. It will tell you what are the cookies you want to allow. There'll be one category which will be compulsory, which you can't remove, but all other categories you can block. So please do that. And of course, hygiene, cyber hygiene. Keep cleaning the cookies in your system regularly. It can be a nuisance value for you because then your system will not recognize a regularly frequented site also. But believe me, it's worth it. Please do this cleaning process regularly. See, Ms. Jayashree, I'm giving you the second part also.
Thank you.
Very good advice. Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
Thanks for an excellent and very informative, educative session.
Very.
Very good presentation, I must say. Very detailed, very bright, not dull. Thank you very much.
Thank you and bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nappinai. It was an excellent session, and it's great to know the kind of work which you are doing for Indian cybersecurity and cyber safety. You are also doing so much work. So it's great to know, being an AT resident, it's a matter of pride for AT complex that you are doing such wonderful work. So thanks a lot for this. This was an excellent presentation. And thank you all the attendees. Thank you very much for joining. I hope all of you must have benefited in some ways. Thanks a lot. We will meet again on 28th November, next fortnightly Sunday.
Thank you, Anil.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Dr. Chitlangia, I want to thank Anil ji for hosting this show.
Thanks, madam.